And as we see the attendees trickling in, I want to wish everybody hello and good evening to those who are in India, and for those joining us from elsewhere, I hope you're having a great day. Welcome to this fourth edition of our webinar series where we host conversations with leaders of communications on issues that are contemporary and affect reputation management profession at large. We are very excited to be hosting 6 such leaders today to talk about how to be prepared for the future. We have Atul Sharma from Rudolphin India, Archana Jain from PR Pundit, Kunal Sinha from Value 360, Dilip Yadav from First Partners, Ruby Sinha from Kommune, and Shivani Gupta from SPAG. And a special thanks to Arun Sudhaman, CEO and Editor-in-Chief of PRovoke Media, who's joining us from Hong Kong, and he will be moderating the conversation. Almost 300 participants have signed up for this talk, and it is being broadcast live on Facebook page of PRovoke Media as well. The hashtag for this conversation is #ScoreTalk, and if you have any questions, feel free to put these questions in the Q&A box that you'll see at the bottom of your screen. With that, I want to hand it over to Arun. Arun, over to you.
Thanks, Hemant. Welcome, everyone. It's a real pleasure to be moderating this conversation. I think all of us here today is aware that these are difficult times, these are testing times, but these kinds of conversations are actually one of the few means we have of staying in touch with each other and of having interesting conversations, and also perhaps looking for ways that we can find some positives from this situation. And that's really the focus for this evening's conversation. We want to look at what the lessons might be in terms of being future ready and how that applies to the communications sector, to the PR agency world, and frankly, just to all of us as people. I'm gonna go straight into some questions soon. I'd like to make sure that all of you are also asking questions. There's a Q&A function that you can use directly on Zoom to submit your questions, and I'll be more than happy to put those to all of our panelists here this evening as well. Let's be clear, this is not an easy situation, I think, for any of us. Leaving aside the disconnectedness that I'm sure many of us find challenging, there are also the business implications as well. We've been doing a lot of research on this at PRovoke. We surveyed PR agency leaders from across the globe. I suspect some of the leaders on this call took part in the survey too, and we found 77% said that they expect a loss of earnings because of the COVID-19 pandemic, and there were various concerns about cancelled work, about payment delays, and even about layoffs. We're running that survey again this week, so we'll see what the results are a month later. But we also surveyed client-side leaders as well in Asia Pacific, and we asked them what they're seeing in terms of communications challenges and priorities. And they outlined some areas which I think will not surprise any of us who are on this call. So for example, corporate communications, how different companies are having to communicate, particularly with respect to the sector that they might be in, whether that's reassuring their employees, whether it's communicating disruption to consumers, or whether it's talking about things like supply chain. Workplace disruption, of course, I think all of us is keenly aware of that. Changes in terms of the customer experience. Staff health, I mean, that's an employee issue as well, in terms of physical and mental. Misinformation, I know this is, sometimes people suggest this is more of a problem in India than elsewhere. But it's very clear, I think we can see it everywhere, that there are various narratives out there that relating to the pandemic, and of course, all of those will impact the corporate world and corporate communications as well. Finally, of course, I think there are big implications for how agencies work, not just in terms of working from home, but in terms of the models they employ. And of course, the skills that will be, perhaps will be more or less relevant after this crisis. So to look at this from a more positive perspective, and taking into account all of those factors, I want to start with this question: what are the lessons that our panelists are seeing from this crisis, and how will they play out in terms of making themselves, making their businesses more future ready? And so, in no particular order, Archana, I'd like to start with you, if I may.
Absolutely. Thanks, Arun, for that introduction. Yes, these are indeed trying times. We're thinking on our feet. I don't know how many people around, who are co-panelists here have had the experience of 2008, 2009. But certainly I'm drawing on a lot of lessons from there. It certainly, that was my first port of call. And I think what I've come up with, the 3 R's that we need to be thinking of: resilience, recalibration, and reimagination. And I'm going to focus a little bit more, because of the nature of business that we run, which is more consumer PR, talk about more customer disruption, that what we are going to face, and, what the economy is going to face and our clients are going to face, and how is it that we can help them overcome that. The impact of COVID, as we all know, has been emotional, physical, and financial. What this means for us is that we need to be, therefore, empathetic. Our communication needs to be relevant and adaptable than ever before. Is there an opportunity for the PR industry? Yes, I think absolutely. It's very clear. There is a need for creative solutions, and creative solutions that need to be sensitive to across stakeholders. They need to be low cost, and they can be delivered quickly through earned conversations. So that is our moment to shine. Now, what is it that the disruption that we are what is being foreseen for consumers? There are lots of thoughts that, okay, well, once the lockdowns go out, people are going to rush out to revenge, on what is known as revenge purchases. I have, curbed my urges to go out and dine. I've curbed my urges to go and spend. Haven't had the avenue to. Will I go out and do that? Yes, possibly. There will be a certain surge in that. And in that preference, what we will find that if brands that have used this period to give back to society, to contribute in fixing the malay out there, what it is, then you will find that there will be consumers that'll say, okay, I'm going to sway towards them because I'm going to support them, right? They've come out there, and, I'm going to show more love to them. But more importantly, one's finding that there's a current sentiment and trends that are being discussed. I'd like to pick on 4 behavioral changes that we will see as a result of this, and for which we need to help and find solutions with our clients. One is there's going to be an increased price sensitivity when we come back, right? So, for example, an area which is fashion, which all of us are very, very comfortable with, and there's something called the summer line. Now, stores, where by the time they're open and they're ramping up to business, that summer line is already going into the sale period. So what happens? They have to liquidate that entire stock. Now, the point is that is where we have to channel it and make it as fresh as, let's say, feasible for them to get the best price for that. And that could happen across multiple other sectors. Because people are going to be saving for that rainy day and not opening up their wallets as much as brands and companies would desire. There's going to be a higher digital engagement we see. And that digital engagement is going to happen because of the forced, you don't want to go into a mall, you don't want to go into a crowded place. You've become conversant over this period of time. So we're not talking about just stores. We've become, there's been a sizable jump in the number of people doing online banking, which wasn't the case in a country like India before, or digital payments. While, when we had a demonetization, we did see a surge in that. We're seeing a second wave in that. So that's going to become de rigueur. And if people are online and they're surfing for information and looking for information, they'll also be consuming that much more information online, right? So we are not, a lot of people will still be uncomfortable about picking up a newspaper. So they're reading, they're used to e-papers, they're looking at all of that. So there's going to be a surge in that. Then there's going to be a continued attention to wellness and hygiene. And hence wellness communication and well-being communication that a lot of brands have practiced during this period will continue to happen. And that is not something that we can, so responsible communication on health and wellness and well-being is something that I think we've got to look at for pretty much till the time that vaccine comes into play, which is 2021. And then the other factor is the nesting at home. A lot of us have got used to it. So if I was a beer brand and then saying, okay, come to the pub and, let's do a promotion, I'm not doing it at the pub. I'm taking it to the homes. That's where communication is going to change. It's going to be more home oriented. And hence we need to recalibrate how we emerge out of the new normal into the new normal. What is the timing of when we come back? Do we start communicating now? Or is it going to be seen as very opportunist? Those are considerations that we have to work with our clients and see when is the right time. What is the redefinition of brand purpose that we need to do? Every brand has a point of view. That point of view is obviously going to be shifting, has shifted. How are we going to transform? So those are points of view that I think that we working as consultants to our clients will have to recalibrate how to suit the new normal going forward. Thank you.
Thanks, Archana. That was great. That's very comprehensive, actually. Quite a lot there in terms of both consumer preference, consumer trends, and of course, in terms of how brands should be more empathetic and perhaps more purposeful, maybe first principles. Yeah. Atul, over to you.
Yeah. Yes, sorry. Thank you, Arun, for bringing me in. I think I'll start with how does it change? How does it change our future? So one, I think we are a people-intensive industry, and that is not going to change. So one of the things I think I've learned immensely over this period is that it's very important to keep the flock together, because I think if we are able to keep the teams motivated, if we are able to get them to believe that it is as normal as it gets, we can definitely get more and interesting work done for our clients. I think that's one thing which is definitely a learning that we've had from this. Second, I think what we've seen is that the sense of touch and feel has gone away. So, we're relying a lot on our senses, sense to see, sense to hear. And I think, our ability to build and mentor teams, understand and deliver on client priorities, manage P&Ls, and all of this on virtual work environment is going to be the key. I think that's one of the key changes that I see. And even post-COVID, I don't see that's going to go away, because I see definitely amongst companies who were not very open to the idea of work from home, I think they will suddenly develop this whole piece wherein you can manage your workforce better and yet get the work done. So I think that's one thing which is definitely going to change. I think touching on what Archana said, right now we work with a lot of clients, and it's very interesting to see, what is it that you can put out there with the media. And it's interesting to note that more and more brands are putting away sales related communication, and quite rightly so, because I think in this kind of an environment, what really works is, as a brand, are you invested in the environment? Are you actually, trying to create something which is there for the community? And I think that's what more and more brands are learning. And so as, agency professionals, we are chugging along and building that. I think another thing which we see definitely from a skill perspective changing for us is there are a few new spaces which have opened up for us. So cybersecurity, considering we are now working from home, and there's definitely a big need to make sure that the all the clauses in your contract which talks about client data protection and IP. You are able to honor that in these kind of environments. So that's going to be, I think, one of the new focus areas which we are going to focus a lot of our energies on. And I think obviously nobody could predict COVID. So predictive analysis, I think, is going to be another space which we are trying to invest on so that we can help and work with our clients in a much better way. So these are some initial thoughts that I would like to put on the table. Thank you.
Yeah, it's interesting. The labor intensity of the PR industry, I think, makes it kind of uniquely sensitive to some of these changes. And I think it will be interesting to see how that continues. I mean, the discussion around how technology will impact the industry as well has been going on for a long time. And now we're almost seeing it play out in real time. Shivani, can I come to you next for your thoughts on lessons you will take from this?
Yeah, thank you, Arun. Yeah, of course, I think it's been, everybody has been in this situation since quite some time, and I think work from home is one of the things that even though I think most of the organizations had it, but implementation of it regularly has never happened like the way it's happening right now. Earlier we were probably doing it once in a while and once in a fortnight, maybe like part of the policies, but now for such a long period of time, it's one of the things that we have got used to it. Initially there was initial hiccups like technology hiccup and maybe some realignments that had to be done with the teams. So that went off pretty well, and I think now people are very much settled in, and definitely I think it's more productive than ever looks like. And whatever we thought that there could be some initial some issues that could happen, which is not. Yes, apart from that, I think couple of points that Archana and Atul both touched are about giving back to the society as a humanitarian thing, which is more not only the brands. I think even as an agency is something that what should be the purpose now in the coming future, which is more like like having a humanitarian purpose, not just a business purpose as an agency. And touching upon the skill sets, again, there is something which that Atul touched upon. It's more, I feel, apart from the regular skill sets, it's the analytical skills and of course the EQ, apart from the IQ that we look in for people. I think emotional quotient is something which we will be looking in for people, which is more like balancing things, more like intellectual with emotionally, understanding the brand, understanding the situation, understanding the consumer mindset. Today the consumer is the emotional factor is probably quite a lot. Understanding how the messaging is going to go, the narratives will change, the storytelling will change. So to understand all of that, the empathy and the analytical skills of the person is something which we need to go back to the drawing boards on and get back.
Yeah, interesting. And I guess that raises questions about training, about the way, the quality of people coming into the business and how they can be developed. And I guess around how maybe perhaps the incentives that exist to try and develop these skills. Because I know that, this isn't the first time the industry has talked about ensuring people are more empathetic and more analytical. But it's not something that I think has always been easily delivered. Kunal, I'm going to come to you next, if that's okay. I think you're still on mute.
I'll touch upon few things that we've actually learned during this period. One very critical thing is there's a huge amount of technology which is there, which effectively can actually help you increase productivity from your remote working team resources. So that adaptation has been, I think we accelerated in the tech adoption. Second, work from home has been more productive, and I have quantifiable data with us, with those tech that we are actually using. So that gives us a perspective into the future, which is there would be model of new model of firms that will emerge, and that model effectively, I think, has already started taking shape in some way in our organization, where we feel that if you can actually really like get work done from the remote workforce using right technology, you could possibly have a very different model which can actually help you innovate from what you're actually doing right now. And coming to innovation, I think this was the time when I saw my team, and especially people not from the leadership level, but a lot of people from mid-level and junior level innovating in terms of how they are actually engaging with different stakeholders. So while print media was gone off shelf and you were consuming content digitally, uh, I saw that how people saw collaboration as one of the big approach in terms of how they can actually collaborate with multi-stakeholder engagement. So like, because we work with a lot of digital companies, we work with many companies which has digital as one of the big focus, whether it's a logistic or ed tech or a travel tech. We saw that collaboration became one of the key things. And also, I strongly feel that the model that we are seeing emerging is giving us opportunity to do much more than what we are doing right now. I saw a lot of clients coming to us, an automobile client coming to us uh, to do a short project, which is already an existing client, to do a short project on engaging with their dealers, which is their one set of stakeholders, which in the regular engagement model or a regular time, we never saw that as a assignment coming in. So strongly in that direction, if in future, if you're looking at engaging with different stakeholders and you want an agency comprehensively to actually service you, it's just not internal communication with your employees, but also stakeholders which are part of your overall business. So I'm seeing that as a huge opportunity. And we personally are going to invest heavily there. And another thing that we have actually realized during this period of time was, and that is something that I'm taking up from Atul, that because we are a human intensive organization or human intensive industry, how important it is for the leader to be connected with reality of people who are working from home. So sometimes there are people who are alone, trying to manage their household work as well as trying to keep a seamless delivery for the clients. So being and this is touching upon the fact what you started with Arun, about the well-being of the employees. We immediately, once we actually started working from home, we implemented an internal communication dashboard. We had a workplace, we got it activated, and we started promoting and telling people to actually be very active on that particular internal communication workplace board. And that actually effectively helped us to actually stay connected beyond doing many other things, beyond doing engagement activity, beyond doing industry connect, beyond doing all the fun stuff that every agency is doing today. I think internal communication within our organization, I believe, became very, very active during this period of time. So that would sum up my own experience during this time. And definitely, I have not touched upon the entire communication part because Archana has comprehensively covered it. I think that is how we are going to see the next normal of the brand communication. A lot of brands are actually doing very community-based campaign and community-based work, actually, and not campaign, I would like to say. And that is effectively very, very seen very positively by the consumer. So that's something that I would like to learn from here, that as a communication side of it, a lot of purposeful driven campaign has helped the lot of brands to be active and be connected with their consumer at this time.
It's almost as if every agency is a virtual agency now.
Yeah.
And you know, that brings, I think, as you've mentioned, some clear benefits in terms of productivity, but then it also maybe opens many eyes to some of the costs that are inherent, or at least believed to be inherent in the agency model. So it's an interesting situation. I mean, just from my own perspective, obviously, our company has been virtual effectively for a decade now, and I always find the biggest challenge is actually making sure people are not too productive, because I find that those barriers between work and life just disappear when you're at home. Ruby, let me come to you next. What are the lessons that you're seeing from this situation?
Thanks, Arun. As an entrepreneur, when you start off your business, you have an initial struggling period. And right now with COVID, I think as an entrepreneur, you become so resilient over a period of time that we think we might be better prepared to face this current crisis. So some of the lessons that I have learned during the current crisis are that one, it's very important to have a diversified client portfolio. I mean, that's a question that probably we can debate later. Is it important to be a niche agency or having a diversified client portfolio because certain verticals are not doing that well currently? Secondly, one thing that I've learned is that technology is not just for your functional use. It's also a very important tool of communication. So increasingly, we are seeing a lot of servicing now is happening through technology, over the phone, or through webinars, etc. Whereas you would be spending so much of time commuting throughout the day. So that's a learning both for us as well as the comms team. And thirdly, definitely future of work. It's all about, I feel it's more about, working from home through technology. And we need more and more individuals who are tech savvy. Of course, the digital natives of today who are increasingly joining the workforce are very familiar with this part. So that's definitely a future we can look forward to. And what you said, effectively, virtual agencies are going to be a reality soon. So that will also reduce a lot of costs on the agency side. Of course, one very important part is that the basis of PR, the communications industry, it's all about building trust and communication with your stakeholders. And at this point of time, more and more business leaders are relying on the communication teams more and more to build this trust and this communication channel with the stakeholders, be it the employees, be the consumers, be the other stakeholders in the government, etc. So the role of the PR firm or the internal communications team has become more critical today, because we are the ones who can really create that business messaging into a more empathetic, compassionate messaging, and see that the corporate comes across as a good corporate citizen at this point of time. So I feel this is the right opportunity for people to realize the value of PR, and one of the first industries which will bounce back after COVID will be the PR industry, even if there's a slight down.
Well, I hope so. And I think, it's I guess maybe it's just a shame that it took a crisis for companies to start behaving more empathetically and more purposefully. But maybe that's one of the positive things that will come out of this. Last but by no means least, Dilip, please tell us what are the lessons you've learned from this crisis?
Thanks, Arun. So, I believe that this crisis actually came like an unexpected pause button for the entire world. And it is not just about, it's not another situation of crisis communication, because crises usually have an internal element to the situation. It's not only external. This was completely external. So this is really not just another crisis communication, but actually a situation which requires emergency communication with the unexpected kind of an impact that the businesses had. I think one of the biggest learning that I'm kind of taking away is, and this is what I see business leaders grappling with right now, is how to take some very tough decisions without letting that cost your reputation. So you are ready to kind of bounce back when the situation actually comes around. And this means that, the learning really is that what kind of organizations would be in a better position to come back or to be able to stand the test of this time. And we are using what we call a rapid test kit, which has 4 R's in it. So one is, of course, your resilience, how resilient you are as an organization, and organization which has strong fundamentals are, of course, in a much better position. Second is how responsible has an organization been. So are they showing the right kind of care and concern for what's happening, and while taking those very difficult business decisions, how responsibly are they acting? Third is, and I think very importantly, is relevant. So certain businesses are finding themselves to be more relevant in this environment, and certain businesses are finding themselves to be less relevant. So businesses which are into essential supplies, businesses which are around technology are suddenly much more relevant than they were. So that also kind of decides how much you will stay around and how you deal with the whole situation. And last but not the least is the responsiveness. So how fast the organization is able to act, adjust, and rebuild. So essentially, one of the things also is, from a communication point of view, is what I would like to call a data sense. So some of us were able to kind of see the data coming in from other countries and started to kind of prepare for the situation, and some of us probably did not. So it's not just about another data analytics, because that nobody could actually forecast what is and predict what is coming around and what's going to be the impact. In fact, till very recently, and we've been going for one after another lockdowns in India, people were really hoping that after the first lockdown things will start to normalize, which they haven't. So now everybody's saying that we don't know how extended this would be. So it's a tough situation, and I see that there are going to be 6 big changes which are going to affect the way businesses are, and the business of communication is going to be run. Number one, there's going to be a lot of corporate wreckage out there. So there would be organizations which will go down completely altogether, and may not be able to kind of come out of it. I think the second important thing is there's going to be a lot of fear, which is already there. So marketing and communication, which is built around hope and reassurance, is going to become extremely relevant. Focus is going to move back to the basics. People will conserve, I think, cost. People will conserve resources, and that will have a huge impact on what kind of campaigns, communication functions would be kind of signing off, whether they would want to sign off something which is going to be one of those just goody kind of campaigns, or something which is going to be far more fundamental and supporting the business. Another one is, of course, the focus on what we call self-sufficiency. So reduced dependency on. So I think while collaboration is increasing in general, organizations would probably tend to kind of insulate themselves to some extent, because they are also realizing that an over dependence on, and particularly from a country perspective, certain countries will find themselves in a situation where organizations tend to start withdrawing, because over dependence is not something which is boring well at this point of time. Human interactions, I think Archana spoke extensively about this, going to extensively change, and health and wellness kind of messages would be very, very relevant. So I guess I think like I said, that focus is going to be, from a communication perspective, I find that communication consultants which are closest to the business, because right now it's about businesses taking some hard business decisions to stay relevant and continue to kind of survive, and later on kind of revive, and then finally thrive as the whole situation ends. So communication which is going to be very rooted and close to the business side, and is able to understand the business priorities. To give you an example, for example, one of our clients is into essential supplies. So while those are important and they are expected to continue to provide essential supplies to the consumers, but then the challenge comes around the fact that factories can't run, people don't want to necessarily return to work. So what kind of communication do you do to kind of charge people out to say that, well, you need to take a larger responsibility, come back to work, and you're part of something which is very important, and keep them motivated. So a lot of focus also went into internal communication, around this space. So I think these are some of my learnings. It obviously is going to become very relevant. certain industries will find collectively that they are not critical to the revival of economies, and they would probably need to pitch harder to governments to get bailout packages, because otherwise they'll be left out completely. So that's going to start becoming very relevant. So I think everybody is now hooked onto the post-crisis and recovery phase to see how things really pan out. But I think some of these, the 4 R's will probably be extremely useful if somebody wants to kind of use them to kind of analyze the situation and navigate through this. Yeah.
So we have a number of R's now, I think.
Yes.
Maybe, I think I've counted 7. Is that right so far? Thank you all. I hope you're all taking notes. By the way, we have 225 participants on this webinar. So this is, I think, by far the most populous webinar I've been on. So thank you all for joining. I think this is being recorded. I'm not sure if a recording will be made available, but I think we can safely say between the 6 responses we just had then from the panelists, that they covered an incredible amount of ground. Everything from corporate communications priorities, how companies need to be more empathetic, how they need to talk to consumers, how they need to advocate in terms of public affairs, the impact on agency models, on agency skills, and of course the impact on people and on leaders. So really, both macro and micro insights there that I think are incredibly helpful for all of us trying to navigate this crisis. Now, thankfully and luckily, we have lots and lots of questions coming in. So I'm going to go straight to some of those. The only thing I'd ask is, because we have just over 20 minutes left, I'd like to ask the panelists to be very concise with their responses. I think in general, we'll try and ensure that perhaps just one question is answered by one panelist. But I want to start with this question, which actually I want all of you to answer, but I want you to answer it with just one sentence. And that would be, all of you are leaders, of course. So I'd like you each to give the one sentence, what you've learned in terms of being an effective leader and keeping, as our questioner Saurav Das from Semcorp Energy puts it, in terms of keeping your flocks together. So Archana, perhaps you can go first.
Communicate, 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 bring them into confidence, show them the real picture, treat them as intelligent business entrepreneurs that partner you in the long term.
Thank you. Atul?
Well, empathize, trust, and invest in technology. I think those are 3 things that I would say. Okay.
Shivani?
I think engage and trust with them is something which has kept us all together. So regularly engagement with them and the trust that the organization and the team has with each other is something which is very important.
Kunal? You're on mute, Kunal.
Okay. I feel as a leader, keep breathing and keep telling everybody around all is well and things will go better from here. So that's what I've learned. That's what I've been doing with all my team members.
Ruby?
You know, one thing I've learned is that you have to lead by example. You know, you are as much a human being as them, and you are going through the same problems working from home. So be empathetic and lead by example.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And Dilip?
Yeah, so I think to me, it's about empowering people, encouraging them to think laterally, innovate. This is the time to come up with completely new solutions, which nobody expected. So it's about empowering people and encouraging them to think more freely when they're at home, their respective homes.
Yeah, okay. So communicate, trust, empathize, keep breathing, and think laterally as well, I think, so, because there are opportunities here. Okay, let's move on to another question. All right, one of you, whoever wants to answer this one, do you think COVID-19 will accelerate a merging of marketing and communications functions at the brand end? No one wants it?
So,
No, why not?
Dilip? Yep.
yeah, so I think, of course, as we go, as we ride out of the storm, I think there would be a tremendous demand on communications to help rebuild. And that is the time, because people need to get back to business. People need to get back to their brands and brands they love. So I think it all depends on how long this is going to last. If it's comes around in the next 6 to 9 months, I think we can expect a lot of energy coming back to quickly rebuild, and there'll be a mad chase and race for who gets out there first. I believe so.
I think just to add to that point, because bigger organizations are going to go freezing on talent. They're going to have a headcount issue. So we foresee that consultants like us will come back into play a lot stronger.
Okay. Question from Mr. Nitin Mantri. With the given changes in ways of working, will firms start looking at talent regionally and globally? Obviously, local nuance is important, but if remote working is the way forward, what stops PR firms from using the best talent anywhere in the world? Cost permitting, of course.
I'll go.
Yep.
When I meant that with this learning of remote working and how the remote working can be productive, I think what I meant was that the whole organizational structure is going to take a change. We are going to go for talent which might not be located in the location where you are operational. And this does not necessarily mean that we'll be scouting global talents. I think India itself would have a lot of talent for new emerging services that is required, which is on the digital side of it. And we would be able to actually, today I feel that I might be able to get a great digital talent from a city like Jaipur who would not like to move to Delhi right now. But I can still engage with him and I can still get him to work. So I'm talking about the talent hiring would no more be dependent on your physical presence, whether it's global or regional.
Does anyone expect to maybe look at sourcing more talent from outside the country?
As long as I think the cost would allow, because that's going to be a big factor in the times that are going to come.
More than that, I think it's got to be local.
Also, Arun, on this point,
have to be relevant. They must understand the local nuances of, you're delivering on a program for the market. Do you know the relevant stakeholders in the market? If you do, and you can engage them, they could be sitting in Timbuktu. It doesn't matter. But we've always found that, we've got queries from international students or, people who've had experiences in France and in London and everywhere. But, they're not comfortable with who is that local stakeholder that makes an influence. For example, in our consumer business, if we have to find a suitable host to do a sort of a store event or, to host a big evening for, let's say, a beer brand or a whiskey brand, they don't know the people. If they know that, then they could be sitting elsewhere. So that is the only thing. I think the local understanding, if they have, they're most welcome. They, and the price is obviously determined across everywhere, right? You could be, even in India, you may find a very expensive talent, but you're not going to hire them if it doesn't suit your budgets.
But as a lot of communication moves to the digital platforms, I think there would be some kind of relevance for skills from different markets to kind of have a role in a market like India, because I think this is where some of the international talent has an edge, which can really be useful in an environment like this. But I completely agree. It's about, focus is going to be on the skills and the relevance of those skills. I think that's going to trump everything else.
I think apart from the skills, it's also the kind of sector you are dealing with. So if you have an on-ground activation, you have someone you're like, dealing with the local activities or events. So it totally depends on what kind of sector you're dealing in. So that's how I think local talent or global talent will probably, the decision is based on that.
Yeah, we see these, these trends coming up in the long term. But I think what I see here and now is definitely, it's a pandemic which has left no country untouched. So there are a lot of brands which are trying to tell a story 24/7, or are trying to be there for their consumers 24/7. And that's where we see collaboration across countries, whether it is Europe, whether it is USA. And I think that's a lot of work which we are already doing for brands across global markets, because I think this is an issue which everybody understands. Nobody needs to get on top of it. Nobody needs to brief anybody. And I think that is something which we see happening here and now. And more so we see, whether it is a predictive analytics model being developed to address this and that coming out of India. I think there's a lot of interesting work which we see coming on the back of it, and I hope it continues and it stays like that in the times to come.
Okay, 2 questions about technology. Do any of you expect to see more technology or automation being used as perhaps we become more familiar with using different types of technology? And will the impact of next-gen technology transform the PR industry? And is the industry ready to adapt to it? Would anyone like to tackle that one?
I think, yes, if I can add that it's not just technology, but I think it's also the whole relevance of how the human expectation around that is also changing. So earlier technology was still there, but clients would resist, doing these virtual meetings. I think it would be far more, they would be far more receptive to virtual meetings now, and that's going to be a fundamental change. So technology would, of course, be very, very relevant in enabling that.
I think someone had a client calling.
I think we've all, over the past, let's say, 2 years in India, certainly have been embracing a little bit more technology. It's come in the form of service providers, whether it's for measurement or whether it's for, databases, etc. We are doing that. And the only technology that I foresee, I don't see, AI, being used that prevalent at least in the mainstream, or let's say, there'll be marginal use of that. But certainly technology, as Dilip very rightly says, to, work from home or to sort of regroup with clients without really getting onto the road and on the plane, will certainly be something that we will embrace very, 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 very willingly. And I think the clients have been have been stonewalling us on this count, saying, come along, come to the office, come and sit in front of us. They are themselves going to want social distancing and will therefore become accustomed to planning the agenda better.
One more point I had to add, Arun, here is that the entire way technology communication is done, technology PR is done, will also change. A lot of your B2B brands, which were henceforth just talking B2B communications, now you look at the telemedicine, the online education brands, you've got this AI, blockchain, all these companies, they are moving increasingly to B2B2C communications in the midst of this COVID. So, we are doing work for clients where storytelling has become very important, especially for technology clients. So a lot of these trends will move to PR also, where a lot of virtual storytelling, video storytelling, the use of AI data analytics will change. And you'll have a whole new gamut of clients, the way you service them, the way they were communicating with the end consumer will also change a lot. And we were anticipating this change to happen in the next 1 or 2 years, but maybe it will happen quickly, much more quicker because of the COVID thing.
I think I'll add to that. In fact, something like a agency is also becoming, apart from the technology, we are also becoming more like a media house, so you are having your content creation. Apart from that, you also have a platform like webinars, where you are, obviously discussing, you have your clients on board, like KOLs are being discussed. So I think that is again one of the channels which is will be, I think, widely used in future as part of the technology.
To add another point is, we foresee that we are going to do a lot of product reveals, which are going to be online, which are going to be on Instagram. We're definitely going to be doing, whether it's beauty or fashion or automobiles, we're not going to have the luxury of getting into a conference hall, right? So so that would be great to do catwalks online, and product reveals and tutorials and all of that will happen. So that's definitely of the future. So press conferences happening on using technology, yes, very much in the near term.
I want to add that, I see that initially we might be trying to replicate what we were doing in the real world environment using technology. But very soon, but that's not going to be easy. So very soon, probably some other kind of patterns and trends and behaviors would start to emerge, which we don't know, which we can't predict. And that is how technology will really become even much more relevant. We'll probably start doing things very different. Right now, people are trying to do conferences. Probably we'll do something else. I don't know what that would be, but that's probably the future.
Yeah. Right now, I'm trying to keep track of questions on like 3 different platforms. So I can
Yeah,
tell
and
you
I think
technology
that's that's one of the side effects of technology, that there's a lot of information flowing in, and the ability to process that information. Definitely, I think people are working 24/7, and I think going back to what Kunal said, I think it's important in this kind of a time, while yes, work will happen and technology is meant to make us more productive, but we need to step back. We need to empathize. We need to be with people. We need to understand their problems. And I think while you can end up automating a lot of processes, but I still believe it's a creative profession. We are never going to be able to compensate technology with people. So I think people will always come first in this profession, and technology can normate our business to a particular extent, but I think that extent will still be lesser than what people can do to this business. So COVID, no COVID, I think people are going to determine the future of this business.
Okay, there's quite a few questions about the business disruption that may be happening or will happen at agencies. What can be done to put employees' mind at ease if there is the prospect of layoffs, and also bearing also in mind the fact that people are already feeling quite isolated. So it's not just a question of economic disruption when it comes to their livelihoods, but there's a whole mental health angle here as well. Who would like to answer that?
So Arun, I would like to jump in here first, just because I think I also represent PRCI. So I think this is the first time that we've seen, this industry really come together. So not that we are a collective bunch always, but I think this time around, weekly basis, we've been meeting over a Zoom call, discussing the issues, trying to ascertain that the communication that goes out to our employees across agencies is collective. We are acting as a collective force. Issues which are impacting our people. So mental health, like one of the campaigns which PRCI ran was about mental awareness, and another campaign which we ran was about work from home. So I think one of the things which as an industry we are done really well with this pandemic, and it's sad that this pandemic had to happen to bring us together as a real force. I think that's really commendable. So
I'd like to add here to what Atul said. I think, and I'm seeing across agency this initiative where they're actually focusing a lot in terms of having a lot of interaction, a lot of connectivity, giving them beyond work sessions, getting them together. And I think that goes to say a lot on how the leaders at PR industry is looking at people around. So as one of those leaders, I would like to reassure people here in the industry that I've seen the report. I've seen how advertising industry has gone down by 70%. I think today we should all be happy that we are in an industry which is much required by the corporation today. And I think we should be all positive right now. We're all doing everything possible to keep job continuity for our people. And I would say that if you're serious about your own job, if you're productive yourself, I do not think any pandemic can take away your job. So I would just like to say that focus on your work, focus just about what you need to do and what you need to do rightly. I
I
think
would like to add that, I see that there's going to be some amount of reskilling which will probably start to naturally emerge, and which is going to be the shift in focus from, soft skills to hard skills. So in a remote kind of an environment, what really matters is a person's very core hard skill to be able to create a material impact with tangible results because it's measurable. So I guess the focus is going to move to, people being able to deliver that, and that is going to be changing a lot of things around, because in the earlier world, when there's a lot of human interaction, a lot of in-room presence which becomes important here, probably that is going to become less relevant. So there would be some amount of reskilling which will start to happen for the industry around this. So people can focus on hard skills. That is what my message to people would be. Focus on some of the hard skills that you have and build on those. They're going to be extremely relevant as we go forward.
Any other thoughts in terms of the skills perhaps people could be working on during this time?
Absolutely. I think Atul and Kunal have very, very, very validly said, listen, guys, I think the industry and no employer at this point of time would want to, be less than kind to any of their talent. They want their flock to remain together. But should eventuality, let's say if some of you who are in different firms are being asked to go, use this time to upskill. What are the skills of the future? What is it that the world out here is going to need? There's going to definitely need a lot of digital work, right? So are you capable? If use this time, if let's say you're getting a pause from your organization, said, listen, we really don't have enough work to require your services at this point. Why not take a course? Why don't you learn? And this is a great opportunity to do that, to upskill. You can never get that better. And I think that's something that some of the areas that we foresee a lot of growth is today we did a TikTok class at PR Pundit. Some of the youngest members taught us what TikTok was all about, because we are seeing a lot of communication worldwide affecting. None of us know enough about it. So, and even younger people were at bay at it. So those are the kind of opportunities that you can definitely learn and grow with. And certainly look at how is it, because if organizations hang in there through this, there'll be a job for many, many more in the industry.
I think apart from that, I would like to add a lot of people, institutions feel, so the newcomers or the newbies who wanted to join PR industry. So what's in store for them? So I think this is the time when they can probably, go learn as an intern and probably just, add value to the organization. So probably it's a matter of couple of months. So they could just be part of the organization and not, maybe just on a basic pay, or maybe internship, or maybe just without pay as well. And that's how I think that's going to add value to them, and they're going to still be part of the industry. So I think rather than getting demoralized or feel, that there is no way out, or it's going to get delayed. So I think this is one of the options that people can opt for.
I would also like to add over here that, employees are the most important asset for any organization, and so no employee should feel threatened at this point of time, because we'll do anything to keep on to them. One more important thing that everybody said is that, the period of having monoskill and routine jobs is gradually going to change. You need more and more specialization. So for most executives, this is the time to unlearn and relearn a lot, develop new skills. And beyond just skills in technology, a lot of softer skills, because as more and more people will be working from home, so beyond skills like being conversant with technology, you also need to develop softer skills like being empathetic, compassionate, understand how your team works. So all these things become equally important. So you need an individual who's got a mix of all these qualities.
Thank you all. We're going to do, I think, one more question, because I've been given another 5 minutes. So hopefully everyone's on board with that. I want to just ask a question about the media, because we had a couple of questions on the media, including from Aman Gupta and from Nikhil Day. So first of all, any examples of innovation in terms of media relations that you're seeing right now? And secondly, again, quickly, what do you think the impact is going to be on the media? Because, you know, will this be the final death knell for print media, even, you know, in India, which has historically and even recently been a robust print market?
I think one big change is that there was some kind of resistance that we were facing from the print media to go the full digital way, and this crisis has kind of just accelerated that process. So we see that it's all now digital. People are, even if there are physical papers, people are not reading them. And that would require, of course, new kind of skills and new kind of things to be done. Would it be, and also with journalists now working out of homes, it's not the same newsroom anymore for them. So I guess innovation is going to now, if you look at what is the way out, you need to focus needs to go back to the message. Do you have really something material to say, something significant to say? And it's not just about being able to give out information which is general, but which is extremely specific, very relevant, and the focus will go back to therefore content and messaging and hard messaging. So that's the change that I see.
In the lifestyle space, one has found that a lot of the magazines today are using the digital platform very, very cleverly. They're having conversations with business leaders on Instagram and IGTV. Harper's Bazaar recently did an entire photo shoot, which was done during COVID times, through sort of a remote camera. So it's possible. Magazines, I think, are finding how is it that they can continue to engage with their readers, with their subscribers in new ways. They've had to drop issues of print issues because they couldn't go to print, or they chose not to go to print like Content as Traveler did not go into print. But they've doesn't mean that we are any short on content. New, fresh, timely content is coming our way every day where we speak. So I think if they do sort of drop print issues in the future, I don't think they're going to lose on either viewers and subscribers for sure.
During this time, what we've seen from the media perspective is we're seeing a lot of inbound approach from different set of teams from the media house, which are ready to actually collaborate and build a property together, which is a digital in nature, where they can actually really build content strategy around that property. To give you an example, there is a business media which is ready to actually create a content platform which could just cater to the startup community. And this would be in association with an investor, a venture fund. So we are seeing that even the media houses, they realize that because print is going offline from being there, print is not going to be there. How do they actually monetize? And we are seeing not in form of earned, but this is more in form of, I would say, editorial, but there is more inbound reach out that is happening. So I think even media is innovating in this time in terms of how they are going to actually create that entire content strategy for the companies that they are actually writing, or they are actually been featuring them.
Yeah, I think Kunal put it very rightly in the sense, just the way we spoke about the way how technology is impacting our industry. I think it's impacting every industry. So whether it is client, whether it is media, it's impacting everybody. So the question that you asked, have we seen any innovations? I think one of the innovations that we've seen with consumer technology companies is they are making launches go virtual, whether it is through Instagram models, whether it is through avatars, whether it is through, augmented reality. But I see more and more consumer technology companies opening up to the idea and doing successful launches. So that's one thing which we've definitely seen works in the ambit of social distancing, gets you the kind of attendance that a normal press conference would, and work goes on as usual. And as far as I think the media is concerned, I think Indian media is a pretty diverse environment. I think, I think only time will tell what happens. But I think one of the things that we've definitely seen is that media is also experimenting with earned, owned, paid platforms. And I'm sure that they will find the best way out of it. And we will have more and more avenues to work together.
I agree with Atul on that, because you see, India is a very diverse media environment. While the more evolved media houses are definitely looking at collaborations to webinars and virtual events, ET is organizing an entire tech event, virtually global tech event. But gradually, I don't know how the regional media will fare, because in India, regional media plays a very critical role in the smaller cities, and their network connectivity and a lot of issues are very important. So that's something to see in the long run, whether the smaller media or the regional media also move to online. But definitely online is an aspect that some of the key media will definitely, embrace much more powerfully.
Okay, well, thank you, everyone. I'm afraid I've got to wrap things up now. This has been quite an invigorating conversation, I would say. It's been insightful. It's been empathetic. It's been reassuringly positive. And I, for one, feel like I'm more future ready after listening to all of you and after having this discussion. I'm really hopeful that our 225 plus attendees would agree with that. I think they will, and I'm sure they found it very useful as well. I'm really sorry we couldn't get to all of the questions. We had more than 35 questions, I think. But I think all of you will be aware how you can get to various people on this Zoom webinar. And as they've all said, the industry really has come together, and I think everyone is willing to answer any questions or concerns or queries that any of you might have at this time. So thank you to the panel. Hemant, I'd like to hand back to you now.
Thank you so much, Arun, for moderating this conversation, and big thanks to all our panelists as well for taking the time out and sharing these incredible insights. Thanks to all the attendees also who joined us today. You can catch the complete webinar on the Facebook page of PRovoke Media and the YouTube channel of SCORE. We do this weekly, and our next webinar is scheduled at 6 p.m. next Wednesday, where we will host a conversation on learning from adversity. You can find more details of that on our social handles, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram /ScoreIND. With that, I thank all of you once again, and I hope to see you all for our future webinars. Thanks and goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you.